Welcome to the 4 p.m. May 18th, 2020 Park Advisory Committee of the East Bay Regional Park District. Chair Rickard, would you like me to do a roll call?
Yes, please.
Thank you. Board Member Ann Wieskamp.
Here.
Committee Chair Rick Rickard.
Present.
Present. PAC members, Vice Chair Obringer. Vice Chair Obringer. Okay. Member Andrade is absent. Member Best. Member Best. Member Brubaker.
I see him.
Okay, yes. Member Buren.
Yes.
I'm here. Hopefully you can hear me now. Yeah.
Thank you. Member Carey.
I'm here.
Thank you. Member Corkin. Member Corkin. Member DeChambeau.
Present.
Member Dieter.
Here.
Member Gregory.
Here.
Member Ho.
Here.
Member Lacey.
Present.
Member Nason.
Here.
Member Robinson.
Present.
Member San Juan.
Here.
Member Skardoff. Member Skardoff. Member Sutsui.
He's
Members.
coming later.
He's okay. Oh, that's right. Okay. Member Williams.
Here.
Present. Thank you. Staff present. Chief of Government and Legislative Affairs, Eric Fuller. AGM of AGM of Public Affairs, Carol Johnson.
Here.
Clerk of the Board, Yolanda Burial Knight.
Here.
AGM of Public Safety, Anthony Chiaburo.
Here.
Additional staff present today are Brian Holt, Chief of Planning and GIS, Devin Reef, Principal Planner, Edward Willis, Planner, Lisa Baldinger, Legislative and Policy Analyst, Matthew Jane, Admin Analyst, Colin Thomas, Prime Gov, Robin Weems, Prime Gov, and Peter Fitch of IS. Did I miss anybody?
Hi, Sue. I'm here too. Annie Burke.
Oh, hello. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Thank you, Sharon. Today's PAC meeting is held in accordance with Governor Newsom's executive order allowing for committee members to participate in standing committee meetings remotely. We are also providing live audio streaming and have provided the public the opportunity to email or call in prior to the meeting for public comment. This information can be found on the agenda on the district website, ebparks.org. Do any committee members have any questions about the meeting procedures? Hearing none, I will move on to the first item on the agenda, which is approval of the minutes of the April 27th, 2020 Park Advisory Committee meeting. Do I hear a motion for approval of the minutes?
I'll move approval.
This is Roland Knott, second.
Unless you give her a schedule or say post this on this date or this time.
Okay, moved by,
Julie.
okay, and seconded by Roland. Is there any discussion? If not, then recording secretary, would you please call the roll for the vote on approval of the minutes?
Yes, thank you. Member Brubaker.
Approve.
Member Buren.
Aye.
Member Burke.
Aye.
Member Carey.
Aye.
Member DeChambeau.
Yeah, sometimes.
I'm sorry, Member Dieter.
Aye.
Member Gregory.
Aye.
Member Ho.
Aye.
Member Lacey.
Aye.
Member Nason.
Aye.
Member Robinson.
Aye.
Member San Juan.
Aye.
Member Williams.
Aye.
And Chair Rickard.
Aye. Thank you. The minutes are approved. Moving on in our agenda, our board member comments today will be made by the board member from Ward 5, Ann Wieskamp, and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. Well, I'm trying to get used to this, but frankly, I like to be in person when we're doing this sort of thing. I like to see you. And normally we'll stay for the whole meeting, but I can't tonight because there's a board meeting I must attend later. I would first like to say that I am so proud of all our staff members. It has not been an easy time for many reasons, but I think everybody has put out a superb effort to make things good for the public. And since that's why you're an essential service, I'm glad we're all on the same boat together. I've talked to a lot of our supervisors. I do in my ward. I try to do that when I can catch them. So I'm going to read some of their comments and we're going to show some pretty pictures. Words are wonderful, but pictures are even better. So if you take a look at the Sonoma Wilderness, and then we're going to have a quick look at Alameda Creek. Sharon is in charge of the photos, I hope. Otherwise, you may enjoy one picture while there it is. The creek runs through all of Ward 5, and this is one of the peaceful times. Other times it can be kind of uproarious and not so much fun for everybody along the road, but it's still a beautiful place. The first park we're going to talk about is Arden Wood. Lynn Philpott is the park supervisor. And one of the fun things are sheep coming to the park, and they're eating grass like mad, I've been told. And everybody else is mowing and planting seeds and hoping that we're going to have some programs with popcorn and wheat. So let's hope things improve to that stage. Now you're wondering why this bald eagle is there looking significant. Well, this is from Ira Blitz. Back in February, just before President's Day, the staff at Arden Wood looked up and a bald eagle was building a nest. They were working in the eucalyptus grove over by the north side. This is the first record of eagles nesting at Arden Wood. Believe me, the staff was excited. Since February, the eagles have routinely been observed sitting on a nest, soaring overhead, and on several occasions returning to the nest with a fish. They've also been known to come down and catch gophers. Our wildlife biologist, Doc Quack, confirmed that the birds are young, probably a 4-year-old pair, and this is their first nest. This is our third active bird nest, eagle bird nest in the area for the park district. The other is Lake Chabot and Del Val, another one of my parks. And at least one hatchling has been seen in the nest. Last Saturday, one of the adults was seen feeding the chick. We're hoping that we'll see a fledgling eagle late June or early July, perhaps in time for Independence Day. So if we get a chance to go out to Arden Wood, let's all go look for the eagle. Thank you. Coyote Hills. It's always fun to watch people walking at Coyote Hills. I'm always impressed that most of them are not on their phone. They're talking to each other, and they seem to be enjoying it. I was told by Matt McDonald that most are practicing social distancing, not so many masks, but most of them have available. There's growing concern there because a lot of people work in the great adjacent area and others park and have to cross Paseo Padre. So we're hoping we can get a light at some future date. Next. Mission Peak. Now, believe it or not, Garden Willie says this is really a picture of Mission Peak when there was snow. He is one of the most interesting park supervisors to talk to. I'm going to read a quote from him. From the perspective from a park supervisor who enjoys a challenge, Mission Peak is a blast. There are abundant opportunities to repair, restore the landscape, and to do good work for the very enthusiastic park users. Next. This is the famous or infamous peaker pole. It's now wrapped in an orange fencing, advising people not to touch it, but I'm afraid some still do it. Next. And this, you can see some of the scarring that occurs from all those eager users. And you already heard from Gordon that he and the staff work real hard to keep it under control. And then Gordon loves his volunteers. We have volunteers doing restoration work. This was Irvington School volunteers. I was there on one of the days they were working. They worked very hard and were very proud of themselves. And we all admire their hard work. We also get a mountain bike group, and Google employees help out too. And of course, staff works all the time on it. Next. And this is more of Gordon's parks. If you keep going through Sunol and Ohlone, part of the year, you'll get the beautiful white, and then later on the yellow fields of spring that are green for a little while. It looked pretty green to me. The Ohlone, all the mountains in the background are gorgeous as always. And of course, you're seeing Sunol, and the cows look pretty happy. Excuse me. We're looking at the Sunol Hootenanny, which is a, somehow or other, something changed in my order, but that's okay. I don't know how many of you have been to the Sunol Hootenanny in the fall. We have high hopes we're going to have it. You always have wonderful music. As you can see here, we have lots of kids projects. We have a little petting zoo, and we just have people having a heck of a good time. I'll say that Gordon is really good because he brings his old Victrola and plays records, and people really enjoy that too. I hope we get to have the Hootenanny. It is really terrific. Next. We seem to have stopped on the Hootenanny. There we go, Pleasanton Ridge. I'll tell you one thing park supervisors always like to tell me about when they have new equipment to use, and they have been mowing, weeding, keeping the park looking good and getting ready for all of those trail users. He also told me, well, these are the sheep. And if you ever get a chance, go and watch them at Pleasanton Ridge. They are wonderful. They move there, eating all those weeds, and they leave the native grasses. So we always enjoy seeing them at Pleasanton Ridge. He said there were nice wildflowers at Castle Ridge staging area. And he also mentioned that the Civic Corps has been there doing weed eating at the Foothill staging area too, and at Dublin Hills Park, which is another one of those wonderful Wayne parks. The last story is an interesting one, and this is at Vasco Cays. And you'll probably say, why on earth do we care about that big rock? Well, the rock fall was discovered by caretaker Neil Nobriga on April 22nd. 1 week prior, he was near his caretaker's quarters and he thought there was an earthquake. He called his wife and she said, no, there wasn't one. The failure that you're looking at was a large overhang that one time could have probably supplied 30 or 40 people's shelter from the rain. It landed in the creek and it crushed a buckeye. It's probably roughly the size of 3 full-size pickup trucks and would weigh well over 100,000 pounds. This was the big story. He also talked about Chris Lyle lives in Livermore, and so we always talk about Brushy Peak. He said there have been a lot of people who've never been there before. sometimes forgetting social distancing, but mostly doing pretty well and enjoying the whole site. Brushy Peak, if you haven't been there, is great. I was going to do a special tour with Elizabeth when she came on the board, and we were all set to do that and Doolin Canyon and Vasco Caves, and guess what happened? You know, the virus came. Anyway, I'm hoping that I'll get to come back later on this year and tell you about some of the other parks, and of course, give you an update on the Eagle Nest. So if you have any questions, if I don't have the answers, I'll get them for you. Thanks.
Thank you, Director Rieskamp. Are there questions for the director?
Hi, Roland.
Hi, Ann. How are you?
Hey, we were just Zooming together this week.
That's right. I do have a quick question for you. You showed volunteers doing trail restoration,
Special project area, yeah.
which kind of sparked a question for me. Will what's happening with that now? Are volunteers able to go out and do trail restoration work right now, or is that
Right now, I kind of have a feeling they can't, but maybe soon we'll see. We always have to have supervisors, you know. But it's a great program. What was really interesting the day I was there with the Irvington High School kids, 3 women decided to come down, breaking the rules on the hill. And did they get lectured? And they finished the walk looking very shamefaced with their heads down. So those kids set a great example of what to do. And so maybe a lot of people learn a lesson from it. Let me tell you, Gordon has one of the best attitudes in the world because he does have a lot of issues at Mission Peak, but he knows how to handle it. I'm always impressed. I like all our park supervisors though. They are cheerful, their staff works well, and I just think we're so lucky to have such great employees. And I will thank you all for being great PAC members, which go through some difficult issues before they come to us. And so we appreciate your advice. We take you seriously. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions for the director?
I'll be back with more park info. Thanks.
All right. Thank you, Ann. Enjoy your next meeting.
Oh, thank you so much. And you enjoy the rest of this one.
All right. The next item on our agenda is a foundation update from Carol Johnson. You're mute. Oh, there you go.
Oh, I thought I had unmuted myself. Good afternoon. It's good to see everybody. The Regional Parks Foundation has been very active actually in raising money as well as continuing to communicate to all of the people that we serve about park use and what is available and what is open and things of that sort. So what we are working on right now are some thank you ads that you may have seen, the first of which on Sunday in East Bay Times. But our goal is to showcase to the public through a variety of venues that we appreciate all of the public who have been coming out to the East Bay Regional Parks and listening and paying attention to all the new rules and regulations. We're trying to motivate people to appreciating the park district perhaps in a different way, appreciating the users, appreciating the staff, and appreciating the foundation, and continuing to fund the foundation for the same reasons to support the park district. The other thing that we're working on are some public service announcement updates that we just filmed this weekend at Lake Temescal with Doug McConnell, who's producing them for us. And we're featuring our amazing medical officers from both Alameda and Contra Costa County. So they're going to be representing the park district in the reasons to get outdoors. And we're really thrilled about being able to do that. So that's pretty much what's going on with the foundation right now. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you. Are there questions for Carol? Apparently not. Well, thank you very much for your report. We'll keep watching for Doug McConnell's Temescal spots. The next item on our agenda is public comments. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comments?
Yes, thank you, Chair Rickard. We have 4 comments that we received via email, and all committee members were emailed these comments. We also provided a public call-in number, and we received no messages on that line. And we also have 1 citizen who would like to make a live public comment today.
Okay.
Let's see if I unmuted.
Okay, I think that was Kelly. Kelly,
Yes.
Hold on.
This is Kelly with Mission Peak Conservancy.
Yeah. Eric, are you available to summarize the emails we've received?
Sure.
Okay, should we do that and then hear from Kelly?
I think Kelly might want to. We might want to have him go live first, and then we can do the written ones.
Okay, Kelly, can you introduce yourself and make your
Hi,
comment?
this is Kelly with Mission Peak Conservancy. So a lot of what I'm going to say is a recapitulation of and summarization of the written comments. We appreciate the hard work of district staff at Mission Peak since 1978. The expiration of the lease this July could leave the city in a tough spot without an operating agreement. The city is looking for a month-to-month extension, but this sounds like an unrealistic stopgap during which the district should be compensated fully for its staffing costs. The Park District hires and trains staff for the long term. It does not do temporary contracting, micro tasks, or freelance labor. A Band-Aid won't provide stability. When permit parking was imposed in 2016, it was billed as a temporary interim solution. The permits expire this July. They targeted visitors and emptied parking on Stanford Avenue and Wybell Drive. Park police handed out 60% of the 4,000 parking tickets on city streets, while the city pocketed 100% of the fines. However, when the contract ends this July, the gravy train of free enforcement for the city will end. The city has a budget shortfall and has frozen hiring. Regardless, it wants to hire 3 additional parking officers and restrict parking citywide. By their accounting, the enforcement expenses won't go up. The main entrance at Mission Peak was closed last month when the city made fist-pounding demands about social distancing. The trails remain closed today. This has harmed the liaison relationship with the city. The district partners with many cities for the long term to serve the residents of the region. We urge the board to support district staff as they negotiate another 25-year extension, provided that extension would benefit the entire region. Thank you.
Thank you, Kelly. The emails that we received were fairly lengthy, and so we've asked Eric Feeler on behalf of the staff to summarize the content of those emails for us. If you would do that now, Eric, thank you.
Sure. Doug Yamamoto from Albany wrote and requested to reopen on a limited basis Point Isabel, possibly for dogs on leash only, and noted that there's an increase in walking in his neighborhoods and therefore the park should be reopened. David Fielder of Berkeley referenced his background in hazardous exposure and notes that classifying Point Isabel as a dog park when other users, walkers, bikers, kayakers, fisher folk, and windsurfers use the park is a misnomer, and it should open for those other purposes. Andre Lojo notes that closing parking lots is a challenge for those with disabilities. He also notes that the support for dogs off leash and would like Point Isabel to be open and have all parks open. And then lastly, to echo what Kelly just mentioned, William Yarugi wrote to reference the Stanford staging area at Mission Peak, and that the lease should be extended for another 25 years between the city and the Park District. And he believes that the Park District should be reimbursed for expenses. And those are the 4 comments we received via email.
Thank you very much. Madam Secretary, are there any other public input at this point?
No, there is not. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much. We will move on to our presentations. Our first presentation will be on the district outreach to elected officials about the parks during the shelter-in-place order, presented by Eric Feeler, Chief of Government Affairs, and Lisa Baldinger, Legislative and Policy Analyst.
Thank you, Rick. Eric Feeler, Chief of Government and Legislative Affairs. Wanted to first of all thank Yuli Padmore and Lisa Baldinger for this presentation. We put this together as a follow-up from the presentation you saw last month from Dave Mason, our public information specialist. We have been working very much in tandem with Public Affairs and Carol Johnson and her team, and we really want to thank them for their support of our program, and we hope that we are supporting their program by this outreach. Yeah, go ahead to this slide. So when the pandemic first broke out and the shelter-in-place orders went into effect, we realized that public officials and elected officials wanted to know what was happening with the parks. And so we began the process of every week providing an email to the staff and electeds, letting them know what was happening and what is happening next. The first announcement was essentially dealing with park closures, but subsequently we've talked about our virtual naturalist programming and messaging that the legislators could do on our behalf to ensure the public use our parks safely. Next slide, please. We've also been very active on the legislative letter front. These 2 letters were with regard to wildfire and state and local assistance, but we've also done some other correspondence looking for federal or state funding to help mitigate the costs of the COVID-19 epidemic. The letters to the federal government have been most important because there's a lot of funding coming through the House and Congress, and one package was already signed by the president. But within these packages, there is funding for local and state government assistance. For those of you who may have heard the governor's May revised budget, he's relying heavily upon some of that funding at the state level to backfill a perceived $54 billion deficit at the state level. The local government funding in the last CARES Act only applied to population centers of 500,000. The Park District applied. We have yet to receive any funding, but we were eligible given our population base that we serve is 2.7 million folks. In the next round, we will be asking that special districts specifically be eligible for the local funding, and the breakdown of the local funding in the current HEROES Act by the House has a lot more specific allocations to smaller sized cities and other parts of the local government. Next slide. And I turn this over to Lisa now.
Hello, Lisa Baldinger, Legislative and Policy Management Analyst, and happy to be here with you all today. So I'm going to give a little update on our partnerships and engagement. So this is a global pandemic we're all aware of. We're all here on Zoom today because it affects each and every one of us on various planes and levels. And so though folks aren't able to go out and hike with each other because of the way social media works, it's wonderful to have a cohesive message across the region so that the way we're hiking close to our homes is similar to how our friends, maybe in a different county, are hiking close to their homes. So we'd like to thank Together Bay Area for their leadership. The Park District has been participating with other organizations across the region to focus on unified messaging and helping people get out close to home in similar and safe ways and using best practices. In addition, in the realm of advocacy, we've been working with California Special Districts Association as well as the National Recreation and Parks Association to amplify the role that parks are playing and the role that special districts are playing as part of this global pandemic. So a tribute to what Dave Mason shared with you all last month and Carol Johnson's work is early on, the efforts of our staff were not really in the light. And so folks thought that when they went out and hiked, they were hiking on a trail and they didn't think about who it was impacting in terms of the people and the families. And so for those of you who follow us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, you've seen our hashtag WeAreEBRPD educational staff campaign that's really bringing to light the efforts of our colleagues in the field and the good work that they're doing. And then the bottom image where you see the road closed to through traffic, this is to highlight the slow streets effort in San Francisco, Oakland. I understand Berkeley has gone ahead and slowed some of their streets, and where I live in Alameda, there are 2 streets that are now closed. This is a wonderful effort from the perspective of the Park District, because by opening these areas, it's able to relieve the crowding within our parks. And though we love everyone to get to East Bay Parks, we first and foremost love people to just get outside and to recreate. And so with the slow streets or the potential for closed parking lots or other community areas that currently aren't in use, it creates space close to home and increases access for all communities to get out and bike or rollerblade or walk, et cetera, and get some respite from their shelter-in-place location. Next slide, please. In addition to the way it's good to have a message amplified, and for those who have been on Twitter, you know everyone has a little bit of a different audience, and so this came from where Eric shared on the first slide that we were emailing out to elected offices the work that the Park District was doing or is doing on a weekly basis. The elected offices are then able to take that message that we've provided to them and amplify it out over their social media channels. With the shelter-in-place orders, we've seen new park users that maybe don't already follow us on Twitter, and so by having Livy Schaff and Nancy Skinner tweet out our messages in terms of please carry a mask with you when visiting a park, keep social distancing, bring your water bottle with you, et cetera, it really helps sort of get as many folks in tune to our messaging and our safety precautions as possible. So this has just been really helpful to have those connections with the elected offices. Similarly, county supervisors have been able to put our messages as part of their newsletters. A benefit here is that it helps to educate the public, and it does break up some of the news. And so it's nice to have an update on just what's going on in the parks. We've been sort of a means of respite for so many. And so it's nice to have that as part of the newsletters. And then additionally, our board member here, you have Director Beverly Lane participating with the Mayor of Concord. They've been able to participate in a number of tele-town halls, so virtual town halls to educate the public on what's going on in the park. Our projects are continuing forward. And so maybe are there new projects that are moving forward, or just what can you do to be safe while out recreating in the park? And so here I'll pass it back to Eric to speak to the Mayor's Conference.
Thank you. Eric Feeler, Government Affairs Manager. This slide shows Director Corbett and the Mayor's Conference presentation that she made. And this was actually in reference to what Lisa just mentioned about the Slow Streets Initiative and having the cities thinking about where they could have other opportunities for outdoor activity, which has been deemed essential by the public health departments. So areas, not just streets, but potentially parking lots that are closed, school areas where there's closure in their parking lots or facilities. So we're trying to get the word out to the mayors that they could open up more spaces that would relieve some of the pressure on parks, and particularly the East Bay parks, which are seeing heavy visitation at this time. And then we also have found, interestingly, that legislators are sheltered in place as well. So they're much more available. So we've been able to get meetings with not only Assemblymember Rob Bonta here, but also some of our federal legislators, such as Barbara Lee and Eric Swalwell and Mike Thompson. because they are looking to engage and they're looking also for content for their own social media and other communication efforts. And the Park District is a story that has positive energy about it, as opposed to much of the news. The fact that parks are staying open and providing people essential outdoor activity opportunities is a positive message. And so the elected officials are very interested in amplifying that message. And we're very happy that they are, because they do reach a broader constituency than some of the more traditional forms of media that we at the Park District use. Next slide. And then sort of looking toward the future and kind of what's next, it has become very clear that as we see the economy challenged, that there will be likely some additional efforts to stimulate the economy in the future, particularly at the federal level, as we mentioned at the beginning. There may be an infrastructure type of legislation that would allow for potentially, green infrastructure, wetland creation, that type of thing, but also may provide for opportunities for the Land and Water Conservation Fund to be advanced, along with some maintenance funding for national parks. And it could become an entire package that could move through that would be beneficial for the Park District and other agencies that work in this space. We did do some research on one of our projects up in Bay Point, where we basically finished a restoration, and we calculated that some 200 people touched that project. And so we do actually employ people, and as we move forward, the parks are going to stay open, whereas other gathering places and recreational opportunities are going to be slow to open. Things like football games and that type of thing, concerts, they will be slower to open than parks. So investing in shovel-ready park jobs at the moment would be a quicker way to infuse money into the economy. And it's not just our own jobs, it's the contractors and the planners and the other folks that we use to help complete these projects and move them forward. Next slide. And that's our quick summary for what we've been up to at the Government Affairs team. Again, want to thank Yuli for running the slideshow and putting them together, and Lisa for all of her support. And I think with that, we probably open it up to questions at this point.
Thank you, Eric and Lisa. Very informative. Anyone, I don't see any raised hands, but are there questions for the team? Yes, Annie.
Hi, everybody. Annie Burke. When I'm not a PAC member, I'm Executive Director of Together Bay Area, and so want to thank Lisa and Eric and the district overall for their participation in a regional effort to communicate clearly, positively, inclusively with park users, and lots of different ways we've been collaborating. And I just wanted to say thank you for your efforts on that. And because the district incorporates two very large counties, the district's really taking the lead and doing a lot of really kind of frontline kind of communication to so many people, and we just really appreciate it on behalf of the whole region.
Thank you. Rochelle, you have a question. You're muted.
Yeah, okay. How about now? All right. Rochelle Nason, I represent the Alameda County Mayor's Conference and am on the Albany City Council. And my question, this relates to the Safe Streets issue that you brought up, which is, Albany and Berkeley and San Francisco have all interpreted the shelter-in-place order, its reference to dog parks, as referring to enclosed dog parks and not to large areas where people walk dogs but can engage in other activities and can maintain social distancing. The upshot for Albany has been that the closure of Point Isabel means that there is immense pressure on the Albany waterfront. And we provide the parking and trash for that area, and it's pretty overwhelming. And my question is there a way, can we, Albany, outreach to you and ask, is it possible to get your interpretation of the dog park phrase into line with the way that the cities have interpreted it, at least Albany and Berkeley and San Francisco, to see if we can all be on the same page, or otherwise distribute the burdens in a more, in an equitable kind of way.
Yeah, thanks, Michelle, for raising that. And we understand that it is a challenge everywhere in terms of outdoor activity and creating space and keeping things open. So I know we have had discussions at the senior management level about Point Isabel, and I can at this point really just say stay tuned, but we will be taking another look at what's an acceptable level of activity out there, and really appreciate your patience at the City of Albany, and understand it's been a challenging time for us all, but we will be taking another look at that facility.
So that's a staff decision. That's not considered a policy decision that would go to the board.
Under the shelter in place general manager's emergency declaration, there is discretion for at his level to make those types of decisions.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Rochelle. Julie, you have a question.
I don't have a question, but as somebody who's probably spending too much time on social media these days, I want to commend what the Park District's doing. I think, just the outreach that's being done and the constant presence, I think is really well done. And it's a little bit of a bright spot in the news that we're all seeing. So I just wanted to thank you for that.
Great. Are there any other questions for Lisa and Eric? No? Hearing none, then I guess we will move on to the next item on our agenda. The next presentation will be on the Concord Hills Regional Park Land Use Plan Adoption, presented by Principal Planner Devin Reef. Devin, take it away.
Thank you, Rick. This is actually Brian Holt, Chief of Planning and GIS at the East Bay Regional Park District. I'm going to give a quick introduction before I hand it over to our Principal Planner, Devin Reef. Thank you all for considering this. I think given the universal recognition of the importance of parks and just the essential functions that parks play right now, I don't think I can really understate the historic nature of this moment that Park District is bringing forward a new regional park that is over twice the size of Golden Gate Park in San Francisco, and within the city of Concord, that provides a robust and extensive trail network, new visitor centers, and a number of other facilities that Devin will go into. So I appreciate all of your consideration here, your recommendation, and I want to acknowledge the partnership of the City of Concord over many long years. We started on this process and engaged in this process through the city's local reuse authority and their reuse planning process. It's not necessarily typical for the Park District to develop a land use plan for a property that they don't own. We do now, as of July of last year, have possession of 2,300 acres of the property. So we are in a position to be able to begin implementing this land use plan, but we really started down this pathway, not necessarily knowing where it was going to end up. And we appreciate the support of the City of Concord as we work through that process. Also want to acknowledge the in partnership with the National Park Service. We really have a sort of multi-layered partnership with the National Park Service. One, they are our federal sponsor in receiving this land through a public benefit conveyance through the Federal Lands to Parks program. That's a no-cost federal land conveyance that has come to the Park District, and they've been really great partners on that side. The local East Bay National Park staff as well have been key partners in really working with us to highlight the Port Chicago Naval Magazine National Memorial, and really, frankly, educating me, but educating a number of others just on the significance of that story, and the importance to really highlight that story and the opportunities within our park area to tell that story and to really amplify the existing national memorial that's on the waterfront. So, so we're working in close partnership with them. And then I'd be remiss if I didn't mention the Navy. And I got to say, the Navy has been an absolutely fabulous partner throughout this process. It's been really touching for me to work with people, to work with federal servants who have acknowledged that this property served a very critical public purpose during a number of wars, a number of crises, and it's served that purpose, and now it is time for this property to serve a new purpose. And the highest and best use of that purpose, that property at this point has been acknowledged as for park and recreation purposes. So I'm personally very invested in this and really proud to be able to bring it forward during this time in history where the value of parks is just so magnified. I will say, you know, we did bring this to the PAC last month to talk about the naming, and thank you for your discussion there. As a result of that discussion, we have reached out to all of our tribal contacts, and we're continuing to engage in that discussion around a culturally appropriate name for the property, and weighing that in consideration with the other input that we've received. The intent is to solicit input and see what we can do with that, and then we'll be bringing that back to our executive committee, and I hope we come back to the PAC in July with another naming conversation for you. So tonight we're focused on the adoption of the land use plan and the final EIR. I think we all agree that it's important for the land use plan and the final EIR to move forward separate from the naming discussion, and give that space to be able to have that conversation in an appropriate manner. So thank you all for your consideration, and I want to thank our principal planner, Devin Reef. Devin's been with the Park District for about 2 years now or so, maybe a little bit longer, but he's stepped in and has owned this project and is bringing it over the finish line and has done a really fantastic job. So with that, thank you, Devin, and look forward to your discussion.
Thank you, Brian. Okay, I'll share my screen and get the presentation started. Okay, so good afternoon to the committee, the chair, and the public watching today. Thank you very much. I'm Devin Reef, principal planner with the Park District. As Brian mentioned, this is really the culmination of 5, if not 15 years worth of work on the part of the Park District, the National Park Service, the City of Concord, and the United States Navy to create a new regional park, which we have been calling Concord Hills Regional Park over the last several years. But as Brian mentioned, the name of the park will be selected as a separate process from the land use plan adoption. Just to remind everyone where the land is, this is approximately 2,500 acres of the former Concord Naval Weapons Station. It's in the eastern portion of Concord, abutting the city boundaries with the city of Pittsburgh. There are views to the Delta. There are views to Mount Diablo, and there are connections and potential connections to Black Diamond Mines Regional Preserve and other regional trail systems. The recent history here really begins during World War II and the explosion, the terrible tragedy at Port Chicago in 1944 meant that the Navy needed to expand their areas where naval munition storage and handling could happen. So they acquired 5,200 acres, which is now what we call the Concord Naval Weapons Station, back in 1945. And really for 50 years, the Navy used that as their supply point for all of the major military conflicts of this country. In 1997, that inland area was decommissioned and officially closed in 2005. The city of Concord was involved, of course, from the very beginning. And in 2012, they adopted what is still effectively the last land use regulation, which is called the Concord Reuse Project Area Plan, which designated a significant portion of the area of the former weapons station to be a regional park. The last big milestone was in 2019, when 2,200 acres of that inland area were transferred to the National Park Service from the Navy, and we have a special agreement with the National Park Service to use that. Eventually that land and more, 300 acres more, will come in fee title to the Park District. So the land use plan was released on October of 2019, but it was actually the work of 5 years with our consultant team, Placeworks in Berkeley, and their subconsultants, and a group of stakeholders that stretch back even before there was a land use planning process. It was developed concurrently with the Navy's environmental impact statement. Importantly, it ensures consistency with natural and cultural resource protection. There are a lot of cultural and biological resources here that need protecting. And it maximizes that conservation while providing an extremely unique new public access to a public space that really has been off limits to the public for 50 years or more. The vision here in the land use plan is to contribute to a balanced redevelopment of the Naval Weapons Station reuse area. That is, the City of Concord has a very ambitious plan to develop 12,000 units of housing and many millions of square feet of office and retail and educational space. And the regional park here is seen as a balance to that, where the biology and the habitat will be restored with a model of resilience for climate change to come and fire suppression that we have to deal with all the time. There'll be a critical linkage with other open space, as I mentioned, Black Diamond Mines and other regional trails. There's a really unique, in the Bay Area, a unique opportunity for constructive and creative reuse of the military facilities that we'll be inheriting on this side of the former Naval Weapons Station. And we'll have a chance to tell the site's historic and ecological stories. The goals here, as I mentioned, biological resources, I'll be going through all of these in a minute. The cultural historic resources, that story is to be told. New circulation and trails to allow for people to be on bikes, on horses, and walking. There'll be new recreation and education facilities and new interpretive facilities, a very exciting partnership we have with the Friends of Port Chicago and the National Park Service. It's helpful to think of this park in different frames or lenses. The first really is as a protected space. What we call natural units are areas of the park that amount to 95% of the entire parkland will be set aside to protect some of the threatened species that you see here from the top, the California tiger salamander, the Alameda whipsnake, and the California red-legged frog. So we have a very robust program of biological resource protection, limitations of public access in certain areas. The public will simply not be allowed to be on those lands. And we'll be creating habitat improvements by removing railroad tracks and restoring or removing some former of the military buildings. Another frame we use is to think of the park as a cultural space. The Cultural Resource Adaption program we have in the plan looks at it's 80 weapons magazines, which will be repurposed for other uses. These magazines are basically underground bunkers where weapons and munitions were stored. We'll be either using those as picnic spaces or sites for cultural and arts expression, or even natural habitat. There'll be protection of historic and archaeological resources, which are on the site, and it'll give us a rare opportunity to present the native heritage and the living history of people whose ancestors have been in this land in this area for thousands of years. What you see on the bottom here is a rendering by Placeworks of the retrofit of one of the buildings that we're inheriting from the Navy. This will become the new Visitor Center complex, and it's going to be a joint operation between the Park District and the National Park Service. It will give both of the agencies a chance to tell the story of the Port Chicago explosion in 1944, of the lives of the sailors there, and the civil rights victories which followed and changed America following that explosion and that tragedy. It will also give us a chance to tell the unique Diablo Valley history of this area, which goes back hundreds of years. Here's an exterior rendering of what the new visitor center could look like and a map. This is going to be the subject of some very intensive fundraising and partnerships by the Park District and our partners and our Regional Parks Foundation. And we look forward to starting a campaign as soon as the pandemic crisis is over and the time is right. The park will also be an accessible space, accessible, of course, by personal vehicle, but also by mass transit. There'll be a unique trail through the city's property from the park to the North Concord BART station that will allow people to come on BART and come into the park. There'll be pedestrian, bicycle, and equestrian access to Black Diamond Mines, to the De Anza National Trail, Contra Costa Canal Trail, and the Mount Diablo Creek Regional Trail and other regional trails. And of course, within the park itself, there'll be 22 miles of new trails and roadways. We're going to repurpose the existing paved roads. We're going to convert former railroad tracks, as you see here, to new trails. And there will be new hiking trails as well as accessible trails for people of all abilities. And that's all in the land use plan. Some of the public amenities, which are still being considered now in this new era. Of course, we'll work closely with the public health agencies on what these will look like, but in the foreseeable future or the long-term future here, we're looking at a group campsite, backcountry campsite, 5 picnic sites and small picnic areas. Something we're calling the Diablo Center, which would be a new building on the footprint of an existing Navy building that will be a new facility to provide opportunities for special events. It would be a rental building in an area that's really removed from the central areas of the park with amazing views. And we'd like to look for community partners to build a new community orchard in the remnants of the former walnut orchard that is in the south of Bailey Road section of the park. So in the end, this is an ambitious plan for facilities and infrastructure and amenities over the next few decades. Here's all of the park plans and features sort of in one map. This is, again, many years in the making and many partnerships and fundraising efforts to come. But it's important to realize that we'll be planning to open this south of Bailey Road section of the park first in the next few years. This has the least amount of buildings, mostly it's weapons magazines. And we are looking at some repurposing of trails and the reuse of some of those magazines. A large section of this will be actually protected feature, what we're calling Rattlesnake Canyon, for habitat for Alameda whipsnake and other threatened species. Here's the community orchard that I was mentioning. We'd like to look for partners to work with. Throughout the 5 years of this planning and even before, the Park District has had a significant community engagement effort. It really began for the plan itself back in 2015 with the visioning. There were design concept meetings with the public and draft plan and preferred alternatives. We've had environmental meetings. We've had the big conveyance ceremony that got a lot of national press in 2019. And in October, we had a community open house with about 100 people. That's where these photographs are from, come out. We did, as I mentioned a couple weeks ago at the PAC meeting, we had our online park naming surveys, and we were really pleased to have over 1,200 public responses to those 4 online surveys. And we had intended to have land bank tours, which we're starting to fill up this spring, but of course they had to be canceled. So we'll hope, if the public health advisories allow us, we'll hope to reopen those with social distancing in the fall. And that will be the way that the public will be able to come onto this land before the park opens. We'll have a couple of those a year if we can, a couple of those land bank tours. So to finish up here, the environmental review was a standalone environmental impact report. We released it publicly in October 2019. We did receive 6 or 7 public comment letters, but in the end, there were no significant or unavoidable impacts found. Any significant impacts in the EIR could be mitigated or reduced with mitigation program, which is in the final EIR. And that final EIR and the response to comments was published on May 1st this year. So with that, I'll finish up and thank Brian for his guidance and his leadership on this, and of course our general manager and all of the park staff and leadership here for the last 14, if not more years to come to this point. We are looking to go with the land use plan adoption and the EIR adoption to the full board on June 2nd. So if the public is interested, that is our next scheduled meeting. And with that, I look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. This is an action item that we will be looking for a motion at the end for approval to forward this land use plan to the board. But initially, let's see if folks have questions. Carlin.
Hi, yes. Thank you very much, Devin and Brian, for all of your efforts. This is really the aspect of the Naval Weapons Station that I think everyone can agree is exciting and looked forward to. And I was interested in a few things. So I know due to COVID-19, unfortunately, some of those tours of the south of Bailey Road section were postponed. So my first question would be, when do you anticipate that we might be able, those tours might be able to be offered? Do you think that's this year? And then, you know, I heard a lot about fundraising efforts and so forth. So I'm just wondering, you know, what is the first area that you plan to focus on in order to, you know, because there's a lot of opportunity, but there's a lot of financial need. So those are my 2 questions. Thank you.
Sure. Let me answer about the land bank tours first, and then Brian, if you want to weigh in on fundraising. The land bank tours that Councilmember Oberger mentioning were scheduled for April and May of this year, spring, when the grass is the greenest and the weather is really conducive to a tour. And of course, we had to cancel. So what we're looking at, if the public health advisories allow it, is to do it back up again in the fall. After the heat of summer is over. We would prioritize the south of Bailey Road area. That's the area that the public has probably seen the least of. And that's the area that we would open first. We won't do anything without the guidance of the county health officials, and it may be ambitious to even say fall of 2020, but that's what our hope is. That's our ambition right now. Brian, do you want to weigh in on the fundraising question?
Yeah, and I'll just say, I know our legislative affairs folks and public affairs folks and foundation are all very interested in positioning this this project and the first phase of the project for the South Bailey Road area as much as possible for any implementation. I'll say we have started to look at opportunities to begin, say, removing rail line and doing some of those initial public safety improvements that are necessary to make that area available. Our park staff is also, you know, they're actively sort of managing that area. And now we can start moving into that sort of design phase where really the biggest challenge for us south of Bailey Road is going to be access on and off of Bailey. How do we do that safely? So, we'll start getting this into our design queue, and then it's really a matter of, you know, positioning this for, you know, whether it's us going out for grant funds or looking out for anything else. So with the adoption of the land use plan, this gives us the CEQA coverage, gives us the opportunity to really start moving into that next phase. I can't give a specific timeline, but I know our director for this area, Beverly Lane, is very interested in moving it forward as quickly as possible. And I think all the staff is as well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Linda, you have a question. Linda, if you're talking, you're on mute.
Okay, I think am I here now?
Yes.
Thank you, and congrats on the EIR and 15 years of service. Really, it's exciting. I had heard so many other comparisons, but to hear it 2 times the size of the Golden Gate is, you know, I'm a visual person, so it's really exciting times for us. And I thank you, Brian, for the update on the native naming and native outreach effort that's underway, and that will kind of get that back to us to look at again. Kind of wetting the EIR and that comment, I was just curious about 2 things. One's just a general comment. I mean, in your slide deck, I'm very interested, and others might be, in adding a slide that covers history prior to 1942, because I still am a novice in this area and curious about, you know, what before all of that and the tragedy, what was the land here, and do we know which tribe? I had done an email outreach myself to Bev Ortiz, and probably because she's already engaged closely with staff, that's going to come to us at some point. But I just continue to be interested in that and would love to see a slide in your slide deck. And I was just curious, in your EIR, since I imagine you have these contacts, and part of that is outreach of cultural and historical resources, if you had run into anything, if you have any comments on that. I just have a high level of interest at my work at the federal government with the US EPI. I worked with tribes, and I'd love to know more if there was any use out there, or any quick summary or elevator speech on that use.
Yeah, thank you for that. The people who lived here prior to Spanish contact were the Chupcan people, which were a Bay Miwok speaking people, and they were part of the mission system and Mission San Jose in Fremont, and their ancestry is represented in a number of different tribes. And we heard from one of those, which is the Wilton Rancheria, we commented on our final EIR. So if you're interested in there, they had some kind of technical comments about tribal monitoring during, during construction, and we've started to engage with them, and they're one of the groups that we're engaged with discussions about in terms of name. But there are many other, native tribes with representatives in the Bay Area, in Contra Costa and Alameda County, that we've reached out to. Thanks to archivists. So that's the beginning. You're absolutely right. We need to tell a longer story than just the last 75 years. And that story is not just the native people, the ranching community. There's very strong feelings about was acquiring that land. We heard of some descendants of the families actually owned South Bay ranches. So we want to talk with those Concord residents or those descendants as well. So there's a lot of long memories, and of course all the people who worked at the base. There's a lot of stories to tell, and that's what this effort's going to let us do.
I'll just add, so we've worked closely with Concord Historic Society and the Contra Costa Historic Society, but John Keibel in particular, who has literally written the book on this property, at least as far as the ranching history and some of the early history here. He wrote a book called Behind the Barbed Wire about the Concord Naval Weapons Station. So we've worked closely with him and gotten a lot of input from those folks. And I'll just also mention, in terms of the tribal consultation, there was a whole separate consultation process that happened as part of the Navy's conveyance and the Navy's reuse planning for the base. So they had to go through the full federal Section 106 process and engaged with a number of different tribal entities through that, basically resulting in a Section 106 MOA, and that included a number of protective features that are incorporated into the land use plan. So some of those areas that are identified as natural units or special protection areas are designated both for biologic protection, but also for cultural resource protection as a result of that process.
Okay, thank you. Elisa, you have a question.
More of a comment. Just want to say good job. Thank you for putting this together, and it's great to see this finally coming to life, really. And thank you for all the outreach that you've done with all the people living in East Contra Costa County, Central Costa County, for the naming and the surveys. I know that one of my big issues with Pittsburgh wasn't as engaged, and that was with issues with Pittsburgh as well, since they weren't very involved. And so it's really good to see that. There is a question. I know this says the land use plan doesn't include it at this time, but in the future, is there, does it have to be in this one, or is there a way that maybe with the development that's happening at the top of the hill to incorporate some sort of staging area up there on the Pittsburgh side of the hill?
Yeah, I'll take that one, Devin. So, it's, well, one, it's, there's nothing to determine on if there will be development up on that hill. So we continue to engage in that planning process, both through the City of Pittsburgh's environmental review of any development in that area. And we've had conversations as well about incorporating potential staging areas or trails or other things in that plan. So we absolutely would love to have that conversation, and whatever project, if a project does get approved over there, we would hope that it incorporates a certain level of public benefits like staging areas and trails connections that can connect to this area, both for, whether it's as a result of mitigation that's needed for that project, or just, public benefit assets that the City of Pittsburgh desires to see in their communities. So we would love to engage in those conversations. We continue to monitor the planning process. We provide comments and yeah, look forward to that. And those aspects can be then incorporated and folded into the park as sort of a approval of part of whatever the City of Pittsburgh approves. So, the CEQA clearance or those types of things can then be covered by the city and sort of folded into our park. And we would just want to be engaged to make sure it's, it works for us and it's consistent, and we consider it from an operations perspective and everything else.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Andy, I thought I saw you had your hand up, but it's not anymore. Do you still have a question?
I do. Hold on, let me get my video active. There we go. As a railroad guy, I see you ripping up a bunch of track, and I'd like to know who I could talk to about possible ways for you guys to give that iron to a museum like the California State Railroad Museum, who could use it rather than disposing of the scrap metal.
Thank you for that perspective. Yeah, let me put you in touch with Dan Cunning, who's our unit manager, and he's the person who's working with the contractor out there. There are many miles of track.
It's way too heavy for our little museum in Arden Wood, but other museums use that weight rail, and rail's expensive. Okay, thank you.
Good.
Dan Conyer, right?
Great.
Dan Cunning.
Cunning.
Yeah, I'll through the chair, I'll send you an email about it.
Great, thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll make sure that contact gets made. I see no other questions. Anyone else have questions? Hearing none, then I would be open to a motion to recommend this plan to the board.
I so move. This is Andy.
And this is Carlin. I'll second that motion.
Been moved and seconded. Madam Secretary, would you take a roll call?
Yes, thank you. Vice Chair Obringer?
Yes.
Member Andrade? Member Andrade? Member Best?
Yes.
Member Brubaker?
Yes.
Member Buren? Member Burke?
Yes.
Member Carey?
Aye.
Member DeChambeau?
Aye.
Member Dieter?
Aye.
Member Gregory?
Aye.
Member Ho?
Aye.
Member Lacey?
Aye.
Member Nason?
Aye.
Member Robinson?
Aye.
Member San Juan,
Yes.
Member Skardoff,
Aye.
Member Williams,
Aye.
and Chair Rickard.
Aye. All right, the motion passes and will be forwarded to the board for their approval. And we will move on to our final presentation. I believe the same parties that presented the last one, and it's an introduction to the Rodney Ranch Golf Course planning by Devin and perhaps Brian.
Yeah, I'm just going to give a quick introduction here too. So first off, thank you all for your support on the last item. One of the things that we try to do in planning is we try our best to get, when we initiate a new land use plan or planning process, we try to get that in front of the PAC as early as possible. And so we can start to get your input and make sure that you're aware and familiar with the plan as we move it forward. These planning processes can take many years. So sometimes we do experience that there's some turnover on the PAC. So it's important for us to come back often. So that's what we're doing here. We're coming early. Want to give you just a quick overview so you're familiar with the project. And you know what's going on, and then we remain available to take your input and answer any questions as the process goes on, and we hope to have multiple touch points back with the PAC through this. So Devin will provide more detail, and thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Brian. Let me share with you my presentation. What this is an informational presentation about what we've been calling the Rodney Ranch Golf Course, which for the Park District is a public access and habitat restoration plan. Here's a beautiful photograph of the golf course itself there on the left. And you can see some vistas that we'll be talking about shortly. This is a really unique part of the city of Antioch. It's at the southern part of Antioch. Here's a map that shows it. The Rodney Ranch Golf Course is about 230 acres. It was acquired by the Park District in partnership with the East Contra Costa County Habitat Conservancy back in 2018. Bought from the Rodney family, who owned a large ranch there and had operated this golf course for about 18 years or so, maybe 15 years before it closed. It's a key piece of what we've been calling the Deer Valley Regional Preserve, which is a larger 3,500 acre assemblage of about 10 different properties, which you can see here in green. And it's really the first part of this preserve that's going to be open to the public. We're doing that for a number of reasons. The first is that the golf course is effectively a ready-made public space. It's got a parking lot, it's got golf cart paths. It's, as you'll see in just a minute, it's really kind of a special place in Antioch. And we've hired, to start this planning process, a group out of Berkeley called Restoration Design Group, and one of their subs is Nomad Ecology, and a small team of sub-consultants. These folks really know this area. They worked very closely with us and the Habitat Conservancy on the Horse Valley restoration that happened, if you're familiar with that. Let me just orient you. This is Antioch here. Well, this is Deer Valley Road, and this is Empire Mine Road. So here's a kind of a wider view. This is really critical open space in East Contra Costa County, and it fits in with these efforts, as Lisa Robinson was mentioning, in Central and Eastern County. Here's Concord, which we were just discussing. Here's the south of Bailey Road area. Here's Black Diamond Mines. Here's the south portion of Black Diamond Mines, which is in Land Bank, but is part of our land use planning amendment for Black Diamond Mines, which is underway in our department. Here's the Deer Valley Regional Preserve, which won't be open to the public. That will stay in Land Bank for the foreseeable future. And then here's the golf course itself. So, and there are more acquisitions happening nearby by the Habitat Conservancy and the Park District in the future. So you see this is really part of a big chain of open space acquisition. If you were to go to the site today, what you'd see are cement golf cart paths. There's several miles of those. You'd see irrigation and stormwater ponds. And you'd see a parking lot, which is about 4 acres, which will become our future staging area. All of the temporary buildings that were on the golf course, if anyone ever golfed there, are gone. There's one large deck that we retained. But effectively, it's a site that doesn't have any structures on it now. It's really nice. The Roddies left a lot of the ranching implements, as you can see in the top left. There had been cattle grazing from the Roddy Ranch operation for many years, and there'll continue to be seasonal grazing there. And in many ways, nature has just been allowed to sort of take its course over the last couple of years since the Park District has owned the property. Weed abatement continues, but pretty much nothing else. And the views here are really spectacular. Our Park Supervisor, Rex Caulfield, says that on a clear day, you can see the Sierras from here. So that's really a special thing in this time of shelter in place, people needing a chance to get out of their homes and out of their suburban environments and into nature. And this will provide that. It's really mostly annual grassland, but there are some stands of oak trees and other trees here. So we're really in the beginnings of this. We're in the public input phase. Today is the first meeting of the PAC, so project initiation. We're going to be starting stakeholder interviews shortly. We'll be working with stakeholders like, say, Mount Diablo and the city of Antioch and Kaiser Hospital, which has Kaiser Antioch nearby. We planned some community engagement events, which we'll have to rethink now in the shelter in place timeframe. We had also scheduled some land bank tours, which will have to be rescheduled. We will come back to the PAC at some point with a review of park alternatives, and then a third time to seek the PAC's suggestion of a single park alternative. And throughout the summer and maybe into the fall, we'll have some adoption events and public meetings, again, including land bank tours. So the next steps are to prepare the existing conditions reports, specifically the biology, some of the traffic studies, some of the infrastructure reports we need here. There was stormwater created for the golf course. Now it's mostly non-functioning. There's no electricity there, although we do have a solar PV array. We need to look at different park alternatives. And we're looking at a planning period of about 12 to 18 months before we would start to do the construction necessary to open this park. Here's a beautiful picture by our design team. This is one of the beautiful oak trees there. I wanted to finish up with putting this park and its golf course in perspective. The Trust for Public Land has an ongoing study where they looked at golf courses across the country, and 800 have closed in the last decade, 20 of which have been converted to other uses, and 10 have been converted to public parks, a number of which are here in California. The closest to us is in Marin County at San Geronimo, but there are 2 I want to highlight down in the Carmel Valley and in Santa Barbara. There are others in Detroit and in Portland, Oregon. It's really part of a larger process of turning golf courses into parks, and I want our park to use a lot of community engagement and educate people about that. So here's one of the examples. This is a Palo Corona Regional Park in the Monterey Peninsula Regional Park District. If you can believe it, here is Carmel. So just due east of it is this golf course that closed on its own and was open for sale as a private real estate transaction. It was actually open to the public. The real estate purchase happened with the Park District in partnership with the Trust for Public Land. They were able to acquire it, and it didn't become another golf course. In fact, it's about 185 or so acres. There is a really lovely golf clubhouse here, which they were able to maintain for rental. So in the pre-COVID days, they had rental income. That's not something that we have, but it provides a staging area for a much larger regional park system just to the south. And one of the things I was impressed with was not only their community engagement with the middle school, but their idea of different zones, a priority restoration zone, you can see here, a reuse zone, and a future restoration zone. So I like this concept, and we're working with our consultants to think in this manner, because of course we can't touch all 230 acres all in the same project. Here's another really exciting example down in Santa Barbara. This was the Ocean Meadows Golf Course, which took over and filled in a wetland, and now through the assistance of the University of California at Santa Barbara, that wetland is being restored, 40-acre wetland. There was really unprecedented partnership with the university and different funders, and there was a real extensive community outreach effort, and that continues. I read somewhere that there were 200,000 plants, native plants, put into this over a 2-year period. So we're really inspired by all this here at the Park District, and as we prepare our public access and habitat restoration plan, we welcome your involvement, the involvement of the people of Antioch and Brentwood, specifically high school students and the administration of the different school systems there in Antioch, Deer Valley High. There's a specialty high school there in Antioch with the healthcare professionals. And this is all neighborhood to them, and we want this to be their regional park. So with that, I look forward to your comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Devin. Very interesting. Look forward to that one. I'll bet there are some questions. No questions? Comments? Oh, Elisa.
Yes, of course I have comments. We're in my neck of the woods again.
I thought so.
Rodney Ranch, it's really great to see this moving forward. I think we got a tour a few years ago and got to go and check out what was going on site and see the potential for a future regional park. You mentioned partners in Antioch and specifically in high school. So at Antioch High School, there's a group called Earth Team, and it's students that are doing internships to study environmental science, basically. They're working across Deer Valley Road at the Contra Costa County Flood Control District's Upper Sand Creek Basin and doing restoration there. So they would be really good participants in the planning process, I think. So they'll have some really great ideas. They've been working in that area for over 4 years now, I think. So I can get you in touch with them if you like.
Yes, please.
I'd be happy to. And your timeline for the community engagement portion of this, is it possible to wait until, after the shelter in place order is lifted and we see where we are when it comes to getting people together and talking about the project? Because there's a lot of people out here that are very familiar with Rodney Ranch, the golf course, and they would probably be very interested in learning about what the Park District has planned for that.
Yes, we would not, we have an ambitious public outreach plan, which basically is on hold now until we can, gather in public. Although there are, examples of these online meetings, there's really nothing quite like a small neighborhood group that gets to really plan together and think together. So I'd like to work with you and anyone else who wants to help us reach out to different groups and work with them, come to their meetings and not expect people to come on our schedule, but we'll be going out to their gatherings once gatherings are allowed again.
Sounds good. I look forward to working with you on this one.
Good, me too.
Great, thank you. I see you, Adela, but I have 3 other people ahead of you here. Good. So I'll start with Linda.
Yeah, hi. I guess once a 21-year US EPA chemist of environmental testing, I'll always be one. I can't help but ask, because also when I was the mayor of the town of Moraga, we had issues. That's a lot of the reasons some of the parks are closing is there's a lot of legacy uses, and there were a lot of problems with some of the, particularly the herbicides and pesticides that were sprayed, but even the fertilizers, that some of the breakdown products are more hazardous than the actual parent components, and many are PBTs, persistent bioaccumulative toxins. I was just curious, especially in your examples, it's obviously been done before, especially your example of the one in Carmel near the water. Surely someone must have looked at that. I was just curious about any legacy chemicals and how long ago this golf course was closed, like how many years or decades have passed?
I believe it closed in 2016. That's a really, really vital point that you're making. I think it closed in 2016, if not 2017. It was open for about 15 years. And what's really remarkable about the turf is that it's basically annual grassland and non-native annuals have completely taken over the turf that couldn't survive. But in terms of pesticide application and residue, that's something that our consultant team, particularly Nomad Ecology, will be looking at very closely. They're really the in-house experts. They're out of Martinez, and they've done so much work in this part of East Contra Costa County. So let me get back to you maybe on that, but I don't believe, yeah, that work has yet to begin, if I could say it that way.
Great, thanks.
Igor,
Hi, I'm now unmuted, I guess.
you're on now.
Cool. As I recall, I understand that Jack Roddy himself was something of a well-known, fairly celebrity type rodeo cowboy or something of the sort. And I was wondering if there was any intention to highlight any of that in this park in any way.
Yes, thank you for that. Yeah, Jack Roddy was a star of the rodeo circuit and is in the Rodeo Hall of Fame. He continued to ranch out here until very recently, and the Park District actually acquired his home ranch, which is just down in the valley, the Deer Valley, but that won't be open to the public. We will definitely honor Mr. Roddy and his legacy at the golf course, either with panels or other interpretive materials. And he was recently written up in an article that I can share with the PAC. He is definitely a colorful Contra Costa County figure. He will be remembered through this new golf course conversion.
I think that would be add a little bit to the richness to the experience there, I think.
Yes.
And if I might, I'd just like to comment on the previous discussion you had on the naming of the Concord Naval Weapons Station Park. I want to commend you for reaching out to the Native American community. I personally think it's really important that somehow their history and their presence in that area gets woven into the fabric of the park in some way.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you for that.
Thanks, Igor. Bruce.
Yes, hi, thanks. Hi, Devin. I had two questions. One, you might have mentioned this, but were there any vernal pools on the site? Is there any evidence of that, or was the site completely manipulated? And my second question, I'll just ask, this is a kind of an island within a land bank, and I'm wondering what is the typical approach to the boundary of it? Will you need to put a fence around it? What is that fence going to be like? So forth. Thank you.
Sure, thank you for those questions. The vernal pools were restored in a very ambitious effort that the East Contra Costa Habitat Conservancy and the Park District partnered on, just down the hill from the golf course at what's called Horse Valley. We're on the other side of, well, just between Empire Mine Road and the golf course. But there are no vernal pools here. There are some wetlands, there are these ponds. Seasonal wetlands that form, specifically, there's one here, to the golf course. Getting a message that something might be amiss.
Yeah, can you repeat that because you were breaking up a little?
Okay, let me speak slower. There are no vernal pools here. There are vernal pools close by at the Horse Valley portion of this. That is a restoration that happened between the Park District and the East Contra Costa Habitat Conservancy. There are some seasonal wetlands that form, and we'll be looking at those closely with our existing conditions reports.
Oh, the other question was about fencing or
yeah.
boundary around this golf course?
Yeah, the golf course sort of sits on a high plateau, and the edge of which is basically a long descent into Deer Valley proper. There is right now electric fencing there. Of course, it wouldn't stay. It's really mostly for security, of course, and cattle. The fencing hasn't really come up. Yeah, it'll have to be isolated in some way. We want to steer people towards trails that get them to Black Diamond Mines and not, and I should have mentioned that's a really important factor, which we'll be making. We don't want people into the regional preserve. We want them staying in the future park at the golf course and onto the trails that get them to Black Diamond Mines.
I see. Thank you.
Adela, we are down to you now.
I have two questions. One, a quick one is, what is that rectangle piece in the middle, right where it says Chadbourne Road?
Yes, let me share my screen again and I can show you what you're talking about.
I'm sure that there are plans to, somebody's keeping an eye on that, but I'm just curious what it is.
Sure, let me get this screen going. Basically, I'm sorry, hold on just a quick second.
Sure.
Okay, can everyone see this? So
Yes.
You're referring to this private, it's a private in-holding. It's a private in-holding, privately owned property. The Deer Valley Regional Preserve is actually made up of about 10 different purchases, which you don't see here. You don't see those boundaries. And I don't know if this is one parcel or several, but the ridge line continues. Right here is the end of our park, and this ridge continues through the private property. And I should have mentioned, here's Black Diamond Mines, and we want to make a connection somehow to get to this section, which we call the Panhandle, which is owned by the Park District. We want to get people from the golf course to the Panhandle and into Black Diamond Mines.
Okay. And then my other question was, and it ties a little bit into the earlier question about the, legacy pesticides and et cetera. And you also mentioned something earlier. What is the situation in terms of what was golf course turf, which obviously was not natural, and how do you go about transitioning that to a restored grassland, and where is it in that stage, in that process?
Yeah, that's an excellent question. So the plan itself, we're calling it a public access and habitat restoration plan. The habitat restoration part is a key piece of this. Right now, it's what we would call annual non-native grassland. The turf is gone, except for the native trees. I don't know if there's any native wildflowers or plants that have emerged here. But basically, we're going to have a very strategic approach, like using that zone system or other approaches to slowly reintroduce the annual grasslands that are a key feature of this part of the county. And we want to use this as an opportunity to interpret that and teach people about how important annual grasslands are, what a native, self-sustaining annual grassland can be. And that's really the effort of this plan, is to try to put together how we would do that and how we would implement it and what the timeline would be for it. But so today, if you were out there, it would look like, sort of an ungrazed part of the typical grasslands that you would see in other parts of this part of the county.
Yeah, I was just thinking it's a great opportunity to, especially if you have to remove soil or, whatever, to reintroduce the natives and, ultimately it'll reduce maintenance in the long term if you can get that established.
Mhm. Yes, thank you. Before I finish up here, did Brian or Christina want to add anything to the discussion about the golf course planning?
I do not. I just want to say great job, Devin. And I appreciate the discussion. And thank you, everybody. I think we're all very excited about this. I think these are all questions that we've had as well about restoring grasslands and how do we manage some of these other things. So, we're excited to be able to move forward with it.
And this is Christina. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Christina.
Okay, terrific. Thank you. I just wanted to say I appreciate the Habitat Conservancy's partnership in this. And they've been terrific helping us to get grant funds and a good partner. Thank you, Devin.
Great. Thank you, Christina, Devin, and Brian. Very interesting. We will look forward to an update in the future once we are back out in the open. And we'll, at this point, move on to Pac Member Comments. I don't know that we need to go through the entire list, but if individuals, if you would raise your hand, let me know. I see Irene's hand is raised, and we can take comments from the committee members. Irene.
Hi, yes. As you all are familiar with me raising the point about how I'd like to see more trees planted. Well, I'd like to just take this opportunity to give a big shout out to the arborists and the crews that are working at Crown Beach down near Crab Cove. They are doing a superb job at pruning the trees down there. First class work. And I just hope that the Park District can pass that along, that we have noticed what a great job they're doing. It's really beautiful. So just want to point that out. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Irene. Rochelle.
Yeah, I wanted to ask if we could maybe get some information about how the district is going to deal with public participation and communications going forward. It feels like I've actually been able to follow board meetings, you know, this way. It would be, it'll be interesting to know if we're going to go to another kind of, you know, system more like other government entities for board meetings and giving people a chance to participate without having to, you know, take a day off work to come down to the building.
I echo your comments. I've enjoyed being able to sit home and listen in on committee meetings and board meetings and so forth. So hopefully the district will follow the lead of the Supreme Court and begin to enter the digital era.
Want to add a third to that.
Oh, we lost you, Linda.
Christina, are you saying that you have something?
Yes, I think what I'm hearing is that after we're all happily able to get out and about again, that one of the things we hope will carry forward is the ability to participate in meetings remotely. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yes.
Yes, I believe it is.
Yes. And yes, we've all been having, and staff has been having conversation about one of the good things that we hope will come out of this is to improve our technology and join the digital era. So I can't promise anything, but staff certainly shares your interest in seeing that carry forward.
Great.
Great. Thank you very much. Irene.
Yes, just to chime in on that same topic, it would be really nice to hear maybe at a future meeting about how the technology has gotten better so far, so we can get an update on that. That would be great.
Good idea. Yeah.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bruce.
Just following up on Rochelle's comment, because she had a two-part issue or comment. And the first part was how to do public engagement on projects. At least that was my interpretation of her comment. So moving forward, Devin mentioned a couple of places where there is a desire to move forward with community meetings, but it's not possible now. We don't know how long we're going to be in this situation. So is there, or can there be a plan for community engagement in lieu of, you know, face-to-face public meetings? I guess that's a comment. I mean, it's a question and a comment.
Yeah, I can tell you, I know that just talking with Sharon and Yolanda and so forth, that they have been, each board meeting, they've added a few more bells and whistles to their portfolio. And I think going forward, they're going to continue to learn and continue to build on that base. Is that a fair statement, Christina?
Yes, absolutely, Rick. That is a fair statement. And I'm going to ask Brian if he has anything to add to the community engagement piece. But with respect to the board meetings, the board public meetings, we are continuing to improve the technology, getting new licenses for more technology. And we all would like it to go more quickly, but we are getting there and will continue to evolve. Brian, do you want to say something about the community engagement piece? I believe you're already doing some of that. Is that right?
Yeah, well, we're definitely exploring on the community engagement side, and we're sort of monitoring sort of best practices and looking in anticipation as, you know, hopefully we are able to all get back together and sort of redo this. But we're also looking at, you know, what's the worst case scenario if this situation continues on for a while. You know, we certainly don't want that to mean that our park plans grind to a halt. We want to be able to keep moving forward and be nimble and continuing to deliver on our commitments to the public. So so we're looking at sort of the best ways to do that. And I'll just say from my perspective, and I think there's a lot of conversation in the planning community right now, that this situation does offer us some opportunities to sort of broaden the tent and bring in people who have not been able to participate generally in traditional public meetings. So so we're definitely approaching it with an eye for that, and how we can take advantage of the moment.
Great. We're looking forward to it. Thank you. Adela.
Yeah, and just to tag on to that, I think that it may require, you know, it's great for those of us who are used to doing a lot of stuff on computer and we're used to doing teleconferences and stuff like that to be involved this way. And I love it. I love the Zoom meeting format. But the communities, the more disadvantaged communities, although, you know, there are still people who don't have computers. There are people who probably are not as comfortable doing something like a Zoom meeting. And so I think it's worth putting a little bit of more thought, a bit more thought into how you outreach to those communities, because that's also a community that has been coming out and using the parks a lot. That from what I've seen in West Contra Costa County, I've seen a lot more members of the minority communities out in the parks. And, you know, it's just it would be a great to somehow get them involved also and not exclude them.
Good point. Thank you.
Yeah, Adele, I just say that I agree with you, and we would see online community engagement as just one more tool in the toolbox, but not a replacement for all the other kinds of outreach that we do. And we've noticed as well that there's more park users that maybe haven't traditionally used parks as much, and it's really wonderful to see. So there are some upsides.
Great, thank you all. Any other comments from committee members? Next item is a report from the chair. I have nothing to report, except if you look at my virtual background, you will see in the background a photograph of the brand new, just opened this week, Bay Trail, extending from the Albany Bulb to Gilman Street and bypassing the Golden Gate Fields parking lot around Fleming Point. And so if you're out enjoying a day on the bay, it's a good place to go and ride and see another beautiful facility. I did promise Colin Coffey that I would take a piece of ribbon out there for him and do a little selfie ribbon cutting, since the district has not been able to do that officially yet.
Great to hear it's open. Thanks, Rick.
Yeah, it was not announced, but we just went out one day and all the barriers were down, and it's wonderful. So, yeah. Any reports from anyone from board committee meetings? Any old business? Any new business? If not, I will declare the meeting adjourned, and thank you all for attending, and maybe one of these days we can get together in person.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Rick. It was a great meeting.
Thank you, staff. Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you. Good to see everybody.
Thank you, Rick.